Dr. Fauci says mask mandates could be coming. What you missed from the first weekend at the Olympics, as the opening ceremony ratings are in, and they follow a trend. Monday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Monday, July 26th. I'm Jill Wagner with Carlo Versano. Hey, Carlo.
Jill, I've had the itsy bitsy spider stuck in my head all weekend. So yeah, I need that out of my head, please. Really a song about the futility of life, if you think about it. I feel like a lot of nursery rhymes are a little dark when you start to really repeat them after a while.
Nursery rhymes, a lot of children's. Yes, it's
Yes.
something that you notice right away. You're like, wait, what are the words to this?
What was the other one? The one I was
London
singing?
Bridge does what?
Yes.
Comes falling down, and
What's the one about the mice that I was singing the other day, where it's about
three blind mice.
Yeah, they're chopping the tails off the mice. It's all very
and
creepy.
bopping them on the head. Yeah, no, they're all. It's something that I noticed as well when I first became a parent, and I looked at these nursery rhymes. I'm like, who wrote these? Why are these even part of like the mainstream?
Right.
Totally. I have Frozen stuck in my head permanently now.
Oh,
So
of course.
you just need something else.
Yeah, I'll get there.
Unfortunately. Okay, let's get to the news here. Dr. Fauci saying over the weekend that the CDC is actively considering changing mask guidance as cases of the Delta variant continue to soar in the U.S. The good news, as former FDA chief Dr. Scott Gottlieb noted on Face the Nation yesterday, the U.S. might be a lot further along in the current Delta wave than the numbers might suggest, given that testing is way down and we're probably just not catching the majority of cases. He said we could be turning the corner in about 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. He also said, quote, the virus levels that you develop early in the course of the infection are significantly higher with this Delta virus than with the old strain, which is why people are more contagious and why this is spreading more rapidly. Last week, we learned it was almost like 1,000 times the viral load.
Yeah, Gottlieb has been so good. I mean, I know that we've been saying this for over a year now. He's just been so clear. He's like so no nonsense. He's really he should really have Fauci's job, in my opinion. I just think he doesn't have a political agenda. He's worked in both public and private sectors, so he's not just a bureaucrat. Like, I think he really understands the public health guidance more than a lot of others. Anyway, so yeah, the surge in the UK, which I sort of keep an eye on because the UK has generally been a couple weeks ahead of us for this whole thing. They are now they at least appear to be past their peak with cases. The cases are now on the decline in the UK for 4, now going on 5 straight days. Britain also has 6% more of its population fully vaccinated, so that's they're a little bit better than we are, but it's good to watch them because usually what happens across the pond then comes to start happening here when it comes to this virus. So I think Gottlieb's right. I think the case numbers are just not capturing how much of this virus is out there, and that could counterintuitively actually be a good sign.
Also from Scott Gottlieb, the Delta strain is driving some renewed interest in efforts to secure vaccination. So Sunday, there were 779,000 doses delivered, including 489,000 newly vaccinated Americans. The 7-day average of newly vaccinated Americans is up about 28% over the prior week. So that's good.
Yeah.
Perhaps it'll help get us to maybe the 70% threshold, maybe. I also saw a Twitter thread from Andy Slavitt, who worked with the Biden administration on their vaccine rollout. And I really thought this was a good way to look at vaccines and their efficacy. So he said, what we know so far about the mRNA vaccines, the Pfizer and Moderna, is that at this point, it looks like they're about 10% less effective against the Delta variant. So what exactly does that mean? He says you should think about a vaccine kind of like an umbrella during a rainstorm. Mm-hmm. It's not going to stop you from getting entirely wet, but it's going to do the job. So if the vaccine is 10% less effective, just say against Delta, it would be like if it then started to rain sideways. So you'd still be okay walking, just say from work to your car, but you are going to get a little bit wetter. You might need to towel off, etc., but you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
No vaccine, and you are walking in a rainstorm without an umbrella at all. And on the idea of masks, it's maybe that's the equivalent of throwing on some rain boots.
Sure.
Do you need them? Maybe not, but why not? So that's one way to think about
Yeah.
it. New York City Mayor de Blasio, he's now asking private businesses to require vaccinations for workers who are headed back to the office. So we talked last week, the city is now mandating that workers in city hospitals, healthcare workers, get vaccinated. And if they don't want to get vaccinated, then tested every week. And he wants to extend that to the full city workforce.
Should be tested every day, really.
I mean, look, that's the way you do it.
Yeah.
Testing and just mandating vaccines. A lot of companies are mandating vaccinations for back to office.
Yeah, and again,
makes sense to me.
It does make sense, and again, it'll be much easier for them to do that when the FDA gives these mRNA vaccines full approval, because that will really take away the ammunition from people who are like, I don't trust this thing, it's not fully approved yet, so you can't make me get it. It's all about incentives, though, whether it's mandates, whether it's payments, whether it's telling your grandparents that they can't see their grandkids until they get vaccinated, as several of our listeners have noted that they've done, and by the way, it immediately worked. That's the only way we're going to get these numbers up. By the way, new deaths are up 20% over the last 2 weeks because of this new surge we're in, though we're still below 300 deaths a day. Just remember where we were, you know, in the first wave last spring, and then that second wave last fall and winter. In absolute terms, we are essentially in the middle of a really bad flu season in terms of deaths. I'm not sort of saying that, you know, there's not reasons to. This virus is obviously much more dangerous than the flu if you're not vaccinated, but. Just keep the perspective in mind, folks.
Meanwhile, some fairly concerning new polling out over the weekend. 2 months ago, 64% of Americans said that they were optimistic about the future. That number has plummeted nearly 20 points since then, according to some new polling from ABC News and Ipsos. Optimism is now underwater by 10 points. The drop was measured across the board among Democrats, Republicans, and independents. And I'm not surprised. I mean, and it's like, and I hate to say it's your fault on vaccinated people, but it kind of is.
Of course it is.
Get vaccinated, and then we can get, the more this virus spreads, like right now, we're lucky, the Delta variant appears that these vaccines kind of work, but the more it spreads and the more it mutates, the more the vaccines aren't going to work. So if you ever want to just like function normally, get vaccinated. It's so like you're ruining it for all of us.
Yes, Jill, you're right to be
so annoying. It's like
it's frustrating.
So selfish and frustrating.
It's really. I'm glad you put it in those terms, because that's exactly how I feel, and that's frankly I think how a lot of people are feeling. Just the patience is. Nobody wants this to continue, right? It's not like it's not like the media is like rooting for this. It's not, and everyone wants to be done with this freaking virus. We've been talking about it for how long now? It's crazy. But on this polling, which I thought was pretty eye-opening, President Biden's approval numbers on the two issues that had been giving him the highest marks, handling of the pandemic and handling of the economic recovery, both of those have dropped 9 and 7 points respectively. It's hard for me to say because, when you have a newborn, like everything's a little bit scrambled, but it does seem like the quote-unquote vibe is off out there, and I've heard that from people. It's sort of like the hot Vax Summer that we were hoping for, maybe we're not exactly getting. And it makes sense, right? This Delta strain is no joke, and that's what's being reflected in these polls. It's not a good sign for the president if the honeymoon is already over, especially because it's looking increasingly like this infrastructure deal could be in danger, and it's falling apart in the Senate. But I think that what you said is right. People are just fed up with the vaccine hesitancy.
Well, speaking of just linguistics, there's a lot of people who say stop calling it vaccine hesitancy. Just call it vaccine refusal.
Yeah.
Call it like not believing in science. I mean, and look, and I say that, people have free will, right? Like you're allowed to choose your own health care, et cetera. But this is something that affects everybody.
It's selfish.
So anyway, a quick update on the fire situation out west. That huge Dixie fire in Northern California has merged with a smaller fire. It's now the largest burning in the state, threatening thousands of homes and other structures in Butte and Plummets counties. That fire has now incinerated 190,000 acres and about 21% contained. Firefighters have made some encouraging progress on the other big one, the Bootleg fire in Oregon. That's at about 400,000 acres. It's burned It's 46% contained. Air quality advisories are in effect from the Pacific coast all the way to Denver. It feels like the air cleared here a little bit, but I guess it's only a matter of time.
It's coming back, my
Yeah.
friend. Another heat dome parking itself over the continental U.S. for the week. So we're going to see more above average temperatures from the Pacific Northwest to the I-95 corridor. Yeah, we got that soupy humidity back in New York yesterday. Always pleasant.
Okay, so here is what you missed at the Olympics during the first weekend, unless you didn't miss it and you saw it and we're just recapping it. Okay. Team USA came out of the gate a bit uneven. The swimmers had their best ever start to an Olympics, winning 6 medals, including the first U.S. gold in any sport in the Tokyo Games. Chase Kalish was the first atop the medal podium. He brought home the gold in the 400-meter individual medley. Katie Ledecky settled for silver in her first swimming final. She came in second to the swimmer known as the Australian Terminator. It was Ledecky's first ever Olympics loss, and she's fighting a punishing schedule, planning to swim every single individual freestyle race. The U.S. men's basketball team also losing to France for its first Olympics loss since 2004. Although this does not eliminate the Americans from gold medal contention, tonight's big event is the men's gymnastics team final. It's expected to be a nail-biter between Japan, Russia, and China. As for the women gymnastics, the Americans find themselves second in the standings for the first time in more than a decade after a disappointing qualifier. Did you happen to see the coach for that Australian swimmer who we call the Australian Terminator? Google it. It's the best thing ever. He was like, he did this crazy dance and he was so psyched. It'll put you in a good mood.
Those are my favorite parts of these. And to that point, my favorite moment from the weekend, did you see this 18-year-old swimmer from Tunisia? He can lay claim to the best underdog story out of the opening weekend, I think, along with a brand new piece of golden hardware. Ahmed Hafnaoui, he came into the star-studded men's 400-meter final freestyle, slowest qualifying time, 50-1 odds in the 8th lane. He ended up winning the gold. He touched the wall about a 1/10 of a second faster than Australia's Jack McLaughlin. Hafnaoui brings Tunisia home its 5th gold medal ever, and he was just absolutely, it looked like he couldn't even believe that he had won. So very cool there. And the medal count, as of this morning, if you're keeping track, China is in the lead with 15, the U.S. is in second with 14, and Japan is in third with 10, though the U.S. is first in terms of gold medals. We've got 7 and counting.
One thing to note, for the first time in 49 years, the Olympics recognized the Israeli Olympic team, 11 athletes that were brutally murdered and in some cases castrated by Palestinian terrorists at the Munich Games back in 1972. Israel and the families of these men had been asking for some recognition or a moment of silence for years. And inexplicably, the Olympics had kind of just refused to even acknowledge it. They even played the Munich Games. It was so bizarre and just troubling. But anyway, they finally got it at that opening ceremony on Friday in Tokyo, a moment of silence for the first time in 49 years. That was really moving. I watched the whole opening ceremony when I got home from work on Friday, and I thought, you're giggling, kind of like, what, get a life, Jill?
No, I'm not
you
at all,
have
not
nothing
at all.
better to do with your time than watch a DVR'd opening ceremony.
Not at all.
I love it. I love hearing about all of the different countries and how many athletes that they have, and I just learning little tidbits about each place.
That's the best part.
Team USA I thought looked great. Some people were kind of slamming their outfits on social media, saying
that's always part of it.
Looked like I don't know, a little too patriotic, maybe, like not like athletes, like maybe they were going to a summer barbecue. But I thought they looked great. Sue Bird, one of the flag bearers. I got teary, I have to say.
Yeah, and Naomi Osaka lighting the cauldron.
She looked,
that was very cool.
That was great. Speaking of ratings, by the way, so I was one of not many people who watched. A lot is riding on these games for NBC, and the early ratings not promising for the Peacock network. So NBC's broadcast of the opening ceremony drew the smallest audience for the opening ceremony in 33 years. Just 17 million people in the U.S. tuned in to the event across all platforms, the network said. In comparison, the opener of the 2012 Olympic Games drew 41 million viewers. The bright side for NBC is that streaming numbers were up across the board, both on the Olympic site and the NBC Sports app.
They've made the broadcast feed very hard to find on streaming. I couldn't find it on Peacock. I don't know if that was intentional or not. But that rating slide is follows this trend, Jill, that we've been talking about all pandemic, right? This thing is really spooking the networks. People just are not flocking to big live television events like they used to. In this case, the primetime event wasn't live, but still, people aren't watching TV the way that they used to. And that's a real concern if you run a broadcast network at least, right?
Speaking of ratings, a bit of a shocker at the weekend box office. M. Night Shyamalan's Old, a movie about a beach that makes people rapidly age, came in first place with 16.5 million in domestic ticket sales. Old beat out Snake Eyes, which was also a theater-only release. Space Jam down 69% in its second week.
Speaking of trends, part of this other summer trend that we've been talking about, just movies that premiere in theaters and on streaming are just seeing their box office numbers fall off a cliff after the opening weekend. People are just not going to the movies unless they're the hardcore fans of whatever franchise that in. So you're seeing it with Space Jam. Previously you saw it with, what was the other one? I forget now.
Old?
No, it was the other, Fast
In the Heights?
In the Heights was one of them. Anyway, I think Fast and the Furious was another one. Anyway, everything's all messed up, right? Everything's unpredictable. Old, however, it's a little bit interesting because it got the meme treatment online, like a lot of people making fun of this movie. But that's the key, right? If nobody is talking about your movie online, even if it's to make fun of it, like you're DOA, right?
I guess, all press is good press.
Exactly.
Cleveland's got a new name for its baseball team, the Guardians. The ball club announcing on Friday that it is going to drop the Indians name and replace it with the Guardians starting next season. The new name pays homage to the 4 Guardians of Traffic statues that adorn Cleveland's Hope Memorial Bridge. It's a pretty famous landmark if you live in the Midwest.
People are knocking this also over the weekend. I think it's a good name. I don't know what I like that it has something to, I feel like every sports team, the name should have something relevant to the city, right? Like the Knickerbockers, the Metropolitans, the Yankees in New York, like it all sort of makes sense. Cleveland Rocks would have been my first name choice, but Cleveland also tapped Tom Hanks to narrate the announcement of this. I don't know if you saw that. It was very stirring. Tom Hanks, man, anything that he voices is just good. He's got the voice of America, I think. But just in terms of these team names changing, the next one to watch is the Washington football team, which is expected to announce their new team name, I assume before the season starts next month. So we'll see what they choose, although I still think that they should just keep the name, the Washington football team.
I don't know. I like coming up with a name, and I think the Guardians is a great name.
Yeah, very good.
All right, that is what you need to know for Monday, July 26th.
Have a good one, guys.